Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session. This is Continuous Close, Shortening Your Close Cycle. Today's presenter is Jeff Vonasek. Jeff Vonasek has been designing, implementing, and supporting a variety of accounting systems for over 30 years. Jeff is the principal solutions architect for all Quisitive ERP product offerings. He is certified in Sage Intacct, Microsoft Dynamics GP and SL, Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, and Uninet Project Management Systems. Jeff, we're excited for your presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to you.
Thank you, Michelle, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us today. So what is today's session about? So we've been talking about for a while now and today about the changes that are taking place in our industry and the changes that technology is driving in our ERP solutions and how it's changing the way we interact with them, how we our processes, how it's improving our processes, and giving us more time to analyze, to look forward and see what may be coming down the pipeline. And that's what today's about. It's really about the what's in it for me with respect to cloud-based solutions, because we've talked about cloud-based solutions having unlimited power, machine learning, AI, and what does that really do for me? This is the first practical application of that you're going to see here today, and it is available for use today inside of Sage Intacct. So we're going to touch on that today. To back that up a little bit, we were talking about the three things that are three initiatives that are really driving change in the industry. Of course, the first is eliminating the close. We're going to spend time really talking about that today. But that brings us to a level of having continuous trust in the data. Meaning if the data is being audited every day, I've got trust in it. And that then means that I can then present that information to my end users using tools that are available to me, reports. And a little bit earlier today, we went through the new Intacct Visual Explorer, or IVE, which is another a visualization tool of Sage Intacct data that can be used, given to people, put on their dashboards, put into PowerPoints, and presentations so that people can understand better about the performance of the organization and the data that's stored inside of Sage Intacct. So eliminating the close, what does that really mean? That means using artificial intelligence to help shorten our close cycle. And it's helped shorten our close cycle because it is going to be reviewing and auditing every one of the transactions we do every day and giving us feedback on whether those transactions need to be worked on, fixed, or whether those transactions look like every other transaction I've seen in the past. And so what's happening is machine learning is looking at all the historical transactions you've done in the past and comparing that to what you're trying to do right now and saying, hey, this doesn't look right, or hey, this looks like everything I've seen before. Let's go ahead and move forward with it. Again, the idea is that there's real-time auditing of data, continuous auditing of data, course correcting, giving you information to be able to change and correct that as it happens. And that brings us to that level of continuous trust, again, that we can then use Visual Explorer, Report Writer, or whatever dashboards to share that information with our consumers of data. So let me introduce to you a new feature, fairly new in Sage Intacct. It's called AI Machine Learning Outlier Detection. So what is it? It is machine learning that reviews all of your journal entries and flags anomalies, bringing to your attention that there is an issue, or there appears to be an issue, not necessarily there is the issue, but appears to be an issue with this transaction, given what you've done, the transactions you've done in the past. It's designed to proactively correct those errors, and it will inform both the submitter, whoever's entering it, and also the approver of those journal entries. It's also designed to identify those risks prior to the approval and work in conjunction with the standard approval process inside of Sage Intacct's general ledger approval processing. So again, it works with GL approvals. You'll see that. We do have a short demonstration of that today. It provides some new statuses in the journal entry list, where you'll see now things are submitted, and then they can either be moved on to be approved or sent to approving status, or they can be declined by AI to be able to address it, to notify the submitter that there seems to be something wrong with this transaction. Think of it as a tool that works as an additional step inside the approval processing. So most of the Sage Intacct approval processing, I create something, I submit it for approval. It goes to a bunch of approvers who approve it for whatever they need to do, and then finally, once they do the final approval, it gets posted. What this thing is going to do is it's going to interject right after the submission. It's going to review it first to ensure that it doesn't see any outliers. If it sees no outliers, it'll go ahead and then move it on to the approver, the next approver, so they can go ahead and move it through the approval processing chain. If it sees an outlier, it will reject it. So the system will reject it and email the submitter, so that the submitter now can go back in and understand why it rejected it and see if they need to do something about it. Or more importantly, if they need to tell the system that, hey, this is a new type of transaction, we're going to be doing a lot of these in the future, so I need you to learn this because it's going to happen again. So you see here, we have a journal entry that gets in submitted status, and a little bit later it becomes declined. It becomes declined by the system. When it is declined, it comes back with 3 sets of codes that can identify why it gets declined. So this is an example of a journal entry screen that has been declined. At the top, it'll tell you unusual historical matches have been found. This is AI saying, looking at all your history and comparing it to this, these don't look the same. Something looks different here. It can be either a coding outlier. So it may say something like, hey, this account looks unusual given this context. So in this case, maybe booking it to the disaster relief project or grant is not appropriate for a rent or occupancy expense. That's what that coding anomaly might be. Another anomaly might be an amount anomaly. So, hey, looking at historically, the amount you're trying to code to rent expense here seems a lot larger than it should be. And then finally, there is the opportunity to show more than one anomaly. So in this example, I have a $100 million rent expense that clearly seems like it should be flagged. And it's telling us, hey, there's at least 2 or more. This account department and amount combination is really unusual. You should spend some time taking a look at it. The role for the user who submits the journal entry is then to determine if the entry is in fact correct or not, or make an adjustment if necessary, and then go ahead and resubmit it through the process. Now, if they don't make any changes and they resubmit it, it will then flow on to the next level for the approver to go ahead and approve. But that approver will be notified that, hey, this thing appeared to have some differences from the past. The submitter said it was okay, but I just wanted you to know, kind of thing. And so when the approver goes to do the approvals, they'll see a list of potential outliers for the journal entries that they need approved in this case. And then down here, again, a listing of what those are, so they can then focus on those to drive a little deeper and try to understand what is causing it. And of course, the goal here is to try to correct these before they ever get posted to the general ledger. Because if you can correct it before it gets posted to the general ledger, everybody's reviewed it and approved it, and you're comfortable with it, then we know that those entries look like everything we've had in the past, and those entries have been reviewed and approved properly. And that's one less thing we need to worry about. And it gets to that idea of a continuous close, because if every transaction that we post to the system, in this case is just general ledger entry, if every transaction gets reviewed, gets tied out, anomalies are identified, people get the opportunity to say, yeah, that's right, or no, that's wrong, I need to fix it. And then that information is sent off to those who do approving. Then we have 2 sets of eyes looking at it. And we also then can teach the system what type of entries make sense, what type of entries should I see in the system. It does continuously learn. So when you first fire this up and you turn it on, it goes into a waiting status where it essentially is going back and looking at all your historical data and setting up these relationships. You know, when this account is used, I generally see this dimension and that dimension and so on and so forth. And it takes a little time to do so. So if you do turn this feature on, you turn it on, you kind of walk away, come back the next day, and then it says, hey, I'm ready to start working to do so. It continuously learns. So then as you continue to do more transactions, it's learning. And the more it learns, the bigger it builds, the more effective it is for you in identifying those outliers. It also does send emails to it sends emails to any of outliers that are identified, so that there's a historical record outside of Sage Intacct, an email or at least an actionable item for somebody. So if you have if your approvers are not necessarily your controller, but you want the controller to be notified, you can identify the controller as the person who should be emailed for this outlier. This is the setup screen inside of Sage Intacct, so the subscription service. It's called AI Machine Learning. You enable it, and then you wait for the status to get to ready. And then when you get to ready, you enable it for general ledger approvals and then apply anomaly detection. Here's the person who will get an email message when anomalies are identified. You likewise also need to make sure that approvals are being configured inside of general ledger, so that it works in conjunction with approvals inside general ledger. Now, if your organization really doesn't want to use approvals inside of general ledger, but still wants to take advantage of outlier detection, that's okay. You can do that, because what you will do is you will turn on approvals, and then you will identify that the submitters are the approvals of those journal entries, which means that if they submit the journal entry, it will automatically get approved because they have the authority to do so. But first, it's going to go through anomaly detection or outlier detection to ensure there's nothing different. And if outlier finds something, it'll then send it back to the submitter so they get the opportunity to change it and then go ahead and resubmit it. You don't necessarily need to use approvals. It needs to be turned on, but you do not necessarily need to use approvals to make this work, depending on the way you configure Sage Intacct. There is some materiality threshold that can be used with the module as well. So for example, you can set at a journal level and at a dimensional. So you can say maybe this department, the materiality threshold is $100. That department, the materiality threshold is $2,000, whatever it might necessarily be to smooth out your workload process. So you can pre-configure these so that when it exceeds that $ amount, then that'll automatically trigger a detection and send it back to the submitter so that they can say, yep, this is a very big expense for rent because we open up new office and they needed a year's worth of deposit or something to that effect. I wouldn't make that rent expense, would I? I guess I'd make that an asset, but if there were a reason why, then you could just describe that and do that as well. And so we'll see that stuff as well. So let's take a quick look demonstration inside of Sage Intacct so you can see this setup and in use. So I'm in my nonprofit demonstration database, and I'm first going to start by going to company and subscriptions. And it's very top of the list here, AI machine learning. And you just turn it on by hitting the slide, and then you go configure. In this screen, this is where we'll enable it. And then once we enable it and it moves into a status of ready, we can then go ahead and enable it for general ledger approvals and apply detection. Notice that it's only general ledger approvals now. So this is what I think of wave 1. I'm expecting wave 2, AP bills, wave 3, AR, as they continue to improve and use the power of AI to help improve our process. We'll see this expanding more and more into new features inside of Sage Intacct. On the general ledger side, I had to go into setup there and do configuration. And again, I came down to the approval section, made sure it was enabled. I set it up, and then down here, I use this little setting that says I would like the outlier assistant to work on all general journals that are being entered. So I have the opportunity that if I have a journal of some sort that I don't want outliers to apply to, I can decide that. I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense. I think I would want to apply to everything personally. There's also, this is the area where you would then identify by journal. So maybe general journal, or whatever your material threshold is, and then select whatever dimensions you want to make sure are all being played at the same time. So that's all configured there. Then what happens is when I go into general ledger and I do a journal entry, and let's just go ahead and add a journal entry. And I'm going to choose my general journal. And I'm just going to call this, let's see, we call this rent. number 5, because I've done this a couple times. And then we'll choose our rent account. We'll choose the fund that this is going to go to. So I'm going to send it to general. We'll choose the restriction, which is unrestricted. We'll choose the department, which is going to go to the facilities. We'll choose the site, the project or grant. I've got one set up specifically for non-related, and we'll put in the debit amount. Let's make it a really big amount there. I'm down here. I'm just going to go ahead and choose operating cash. Do so. I'm going to sync up these guys. Main 999. There we go. And you notice I have that submit button. So there's no more post button anymore because I've turned on approvals. So I have to go ahead and submit it. And when I do so, what I will see is that that entry now. So if I view the transactions for the general journal, it's sitting and submitted. Now I'm going to quickly switch over to the approver. This is the person who's approved, and you'll notice that they have one approval to do. That's a rent number 3, not the one I just created, because it hasn't made it there yet. It hasn't gone through anomaly detection yet or outlier detection, and it's not ready to be approved. So again, it's put in front of the approval process, and once it passes through that, then it will go to the approver. And it's showing as submitted, so it takes a little bit of time for AI to kick in and do what it needs to do. And it was declined. There it is. So let's go ahead and edit it. Take a little look at it. So we can see unusual historical matches have been found. There are a series of 2. Down here it's telling us multiple, that this account department and amount combination seems unusual. Is that correct? And I may say, oh boy, I butterfingering that up. I really wanted to do 9,999. 9,999. Ooh, thank goodness it told me. Otherwise, I would have a lot of explaining to do. And we go ahead and resubmit that. Now, when an item has been resubmitted, and that essentially is being approved by the submitter, information about that is still available to whoever the approver is. So this is my approver. This is who that's going to go to. I've logged in as that user to simulate that, and you'll notice that it does show an outlier question mark here. And when they go to view that, they'll get that same sort of information, unusual historical data. So they're notified, and they get the opportunity to decide whether, okay, this is right or wrong. And again, they get that same sort of information about what kind of things is causing it. And if they're satisfied with it, they go and approve, and that thing gets posted. Otherwise, they can decline and send a message back to whoever the submitter was saying, hey, you used the wrong department here, or this shouldn't go to that project or grant. And it will remember that, right? It'll remember that, hey, that wasn't the right combination, so next time it'll identify that. So that's a quick demonstration of what the outlier detector looks like. This is available today inside of Sage Intacct for General Ledger. We are expecting in the future extended feature functionality of artificial intelligence around the process inside of Sage Intacct. Again, helping us to try to correct those transactions as they happen so that we can trust the data every day and shorten our time to close, because by the end of the month, when we finish, I'll know all the transactions have been reviewed and approved by AI as well as my approvers. And there's less I need to worry about or less I need to do to review and audit that data. Certainly there are processes you'll still need to do. I'm not saying that. But the idea is that you've got that faith and confidence that is past that first level. And that should speed up your process. And in a lot of ways, I think that's really what does artificial intelligence really mean to me, and why is only the cloud able to do so? Because the cloud's got that unlimited power and that ability to store the historical data, which you can chew through and continue to learn, improving your process and your time to enter transactions. And then having more trust in that data, then you're more comfortable in presenting that information to the consumers of that data on a real-time basis. And that sort of works our way back to Intacct's Visual Explorer, or IVE, in providing that information to report consumers on a daily basis, because that the transactions that represent the cost that sit in their department or their company have all been approved and look a lot like the transactions that happen in the past, like by AI. Again, moving us towards really moving us from tactical to strategic, which I think means we can now spend more time analyzing the data and less time with the perfunctory business of entering it and making sure it's right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Michelle. Michelle?
Thanks so much for that presentation, Jeff. Well, we thank everyone for joining us today. And so please, if there were questions you wanted to ask us today or you think of them later, reach out to us at ask@quisitive.com. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.